Hare Krishna.
Oh, thank you for that. That was an amazing introduction. I don't know if I can live up to it, but let's see. I can ask kindly if someone else could do the Radhamadhava prayers. My throat's a little bit sore, and I'm really not a singer anyway. So if you would do that for me, Prabhu, that would be really kind. Thank you.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for that. So, as Lily Jagannatheshwari told you, my name, thank you so much. name is Rasesvari Devi Dāsi. Anyone here a Sanskrit scholar? Okay, good. My name is what is called in Sanskrit as diphthong, where two names are joined together so the letter in the middle changes. So the name is actually Rasesvari, a name for Radharani, which means Queen of the Rasa dance. Do not forget that Dasi comes after this. When I was initiated, it was 1976, and I was given my name, and I just simply burst into tears. I felt it was the most beautiful name I'd ever heard. And when I was told the meaning of it, it was even more so, and that feeling has never changed. So, I know a lot of you here are younger. There aren't many people who are older than me. And I just thought today it would be really nice to honor Srila Prabhupada. Honor Srila Prabhupada by reminding everybody that Srila Prabhupada had a life before we know him. That he had a life in India, that he went through so many trials and tribulations before he even set foot in the West. And I think sometimes we feel we know Srila Prabhupada as, his divine grace, this exalted personality. But I just want to go back and tell you a little bit about what Srila Prabhupada went through to bring us the gift that he brought to the Western world. So Srila Prabhupada was born in I'm sorry, I've forgotten the date. This is part of the problem getting old. It was the 1800s. It was still Britain, the Raj in Calcutta, in India. He grew up in a very loving family, a very devotional family. They would go across from their apartment to their neighbour's apartment where there were Radha Krishna deities. And from birth, Srila Prabhupada was brought up in the Vaishnava tradition. And when he got a little older, he studied, he went to school. He went to Scottish Church's school in Calcutta. And there he was taught very strictly by the Scottish teachers. At that time, at the time of the British Raj, there were lots of Scottish people in, we always think English, don't we? Well, they were the sort of higher-ups, if you will. But the engineers, the teachers, the doers were very much Scottish. So Srila Prabhupada studied there. His mother and his family wanted him to come to England to study as a lawyer, to study law. But his father said, no, this isn't what I want my son to do. So instead, he studied chemistry, and he had his own business for a long time, making potions, making medicines, making ointments, and it wasn't doing very well, He was trying harder and harder with his business, but it wasn't going anywhere. So he had various shops. For a time, he had a factory. He was managing the factory, and again, it wasn't working, it was failing. And as we go through our life, I'm sure I'm not the only person that often thinks, why isn't it working? I'm trying my hardest, I'm doing my best. I'm doing this for Krishna, why is it not working? Well, there are good reasons why things don't work, and we don't always know what they are. So in 1922, Srila Prabhupada was a young man. He was a follower of Gandhi at the time. And a friend of his said to him one day, "Come with me, I'm going to see this guru. I want you to come with me." No, I don't want to go. I've got Gandhiji, it's fine. No, he said, you must come. I've heard he's a really good speaker. You've got to come with me. So, okay. If that's what I need to do to keep you quiet, I'll come. And that was probably the biggest turning point, because that night he met his spiritual master. He met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And he was sat at the back, trying to be very inconspicuous, trying not to let anyone see him, but it didn't work. Bhaktisiddhanta saw him, and afterwards he said, "I saw that boy, he listens." He was very pleased with that. And later, when he was initiated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he was instructed, if ever you get any money, print books. And Srila Prabhupada, right, well, I'm still working, I have a family now, I'm married, I have children. Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can make some money and print books. So he worked for a long time as a chemist. He even tried in Jhansi to open a small temple. He called it the League of Devotees. And it failed. People weren't coming. Nobody wanted to come. So again, Prabhupada's work was failing. Prabhupada's mission was failing. But he carried on. He met his spiritual master, I think, only twice more. And the biggest instruction he was given, the most serious instruction he was given, if you're speaking English, you write English, write articles, go to the West. Take this movement to the Western world and spread it there. And that was in 1933. Prabhupada didn't come to the West for many years. Not because he didn't want to, but because the time wasn't right. Things weren't right. He took sannyas in 1959. And then he lived in Vrindavan at the Radha Damodar temple. And he lived there between 1962 and 1965. So again, we're a long way from what we know of Srila Prabhupada. He was writing, he was translating Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. He was writing articles. He started Back to Godhead magazine. But not only was he writing the articles, he was setting them, he was printing them, and then he was going out on the street and he was selling them in Delhi. And oftentimes, Srila Prabhupada went without food. He went without the ordinary things that we take for granted. A roof, warmth, food, clothing, etc. These were not important. What was important was spreading the name of Krishna, spreading the word of Chaitanya. Every town and village, how can I do this? How can I do this? So finally, he heard of a lady who was a friend of a friend, and she was the head of the Scania line, shipping line. And he begged her, please, give me passage to the West. And she said no. Swamiji, you will not survive. No, absolutely not. I cannot be responsible for what will happen to you if you go to the West. It was already, what what we would consider an older person now in this country. So he didn't give up. He kept going back and going back and going back, and finally she agreed to give him free passage on the good ship Jaladutta. Prabhupada left from Bombay, and the captain was wary. He didn't know whether this gentleman was going to survive. All Prabhupada had with him was some trunks of books, 200 copies of the translations he'd done from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. And he had some money with him. He had added up to about $7. Well, if you had $7, you wouldn't now be allowed into America, let alone be able to survive there, because it wouldn't even pay you cab fare from where you got off the boat to where you were staying. While he was on that boat, Srila Prabhupada suffered 2 heart attacks. The weather was not always kind. He was on the boat for 35 days. 35 days, that's more than a month at sea. And he suffered. And again, the captain was worried, I don't know whether you're going to make it. But he did. Somehow he came through, and he did. And at the age of 69, he landed in Boston. While he was on the Jaladutta, he wrote a poem. And it's quite a long poem, but I'm going to share with you just a few lines of the poem. This was Prabhupada's mood on the Jaladutta, suffering all the hardships he'd gone through to get to where he was. And he says, Krishna, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you've brought me here to dance, make me dance. Make me dance. Make me dance as you like. And that was Prabhupada's solemn prayer. The whole time, the whole difficulties, whatever happened, that's what I want to do. He stayed with a family in Boston for a little while, and there was one lecture where Prabhupada was explaining how kind the Agarwals were, and he said, but it was very difficult. I had to put prasadam in the fridge with the cat food. And for a gentleman who grew up in Calcutta, in a not wealthy but a well-to-do family, middle-class family, a Vaishnava, who had never left India, to come to see the skyscrapers in Boston, to see the hustle and the bustle. I don't know, Calcutta can be bustly and bustly too, but to see this, to be so culturally unaware of America. Soon after, Srila Prabhupada moved from Boston and he moved to New York. And you would hope things got better, but unfortunately they didn't. He was poor. He would try to sell his Back to Godhead magazines, he would try to sell books, he would go to different bookshops and ask them to take books. Sometimes sale or return. He'd return to the bookshops the next day. Did you sell any of my books? Is there any money? And that's how Prabhupada, we look at our lives now, and I think we are so, so fortunate. When I first moved into the temple, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. When we first moved into Bhaktivedanta Manor, it was the most austere place I had ever been. We had no money at all. George Harrison had agreed to buy the property, and we moved in. It had been empty for a long time. And the devotees, we were going down to the market in Watford at the end of every day and picking up cabbages and potatoes and bringing them back to the manor, and that's what we were living on. There were no fancy tiles, the floors were wooden. If you happened to get a little bit excited during arti, you'd then have to go and pull the splinters out of your feet. And we thought we were so austere. There was no heating at all in the manor. And we thought that was so austere. Because then we didn't know this backstory of Srila Prabhupada. He hadn't told anybody. He hadn't told us about all this. And we thought we were the most austere people in the world. So Prabhupada's there in the Lower East Side of New York, which isn't a lovely area, it's a difficult area. Prabhupada would go out. He met one or two young men who were happy to hear what he had to say, and he asked them to help him. So he would go to Tompkins Square Park. He sat under a tree with his little drum. He didn't even have cartels at the time, he had a little drum, and he would chant Hare Krishna. And people slowly, gradually, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Swami, speak to us. And these two young men, Mukunda Maharaj, as he is now, who resides now in Australia, and Guru Das, and different people would come. Eventually, he was staying in an apartment with a young man, and the young man was on drugs. Prabhupada was trying to work at one end of the loft apartment. He was going crazy on drugs. He smashed up the whole apartment. He stole Srila Prabhupada's typewriter, which was his only means of translating. And every day something new was seemingly pushing him down, stopping him from doing the one thing that he wanted to do. And again, I'm doing this for Krishna. Why is it not working? How come? I'm trying so hard. Krishna, make me dance. And that was Prabhupada's mood the whole time. Whatever happened, Krishna, make me dance. If that's what you want, make me dance. So eventually, with the help of these young devotees, I don't know if you've ever seen, there is a picture. I have it on my phone, but obviously I can't sort of blow it up. But if anyone wants to see it later, I'm happy to show you this picture. There are 4 young men with long hair, beards. At the time, they probably were called beatniks. So they're sitting outside on the pavement, and they're joined together, laughing, holding each other. And I once showed this picture, and I said, what do you see there? And people were saying, well, hippies, beatniks, people that helped Prabhupada, people that did this, people that did that. And I said, you know what Srila Prabhupada saw? He saw 108 temples, an international society, and the holy name spreading to every town and village in the West. And that's vision. That's spiritual vision. Because just a year later, from having this storefront, which fortunately had the heading matchless gifts over the top, that wasn't a devotee thing, that was already there. So they moved into the storefront, And just 1 year after going to New York, Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON. Probably 12, 13 devotees. And he set it out, had the papers incorporated and everything. Then it was time to spread. So he asked Mukunda, Gurudas, Shamsundar, not Shamsundar, he was already there, to go to San Francisco. So they travelled, again, I don't know how familiar you are, but America's it's a huge continent, it's a big place. And you used to be able to get jobs driving cars from one side of the country to the other, and someone would pay you to do that. So the devotees took one of these cars, they all piled in, and off they went. And they were looking for someone they knew. They were looking for Sam and Melanie. Now, Sam and Melanie were living in the wilds. They were doing what's called fire watching. So they were up in the very north of California. It's very forested. And they build these huge towers. And people stay there. And during the day and night, they're watching for any fires that might start so that they can't, they don't spread and become big. And this was what Sam and Melanie were doing. But during the winter, you had to watch the weather coming in, because if it snowed before you got out, you didn't get out. So they were watching for this when Janaki and Mukunda and Yamuna got to this place. They stayed in this big tower, watching the weather coming in, escaping down just in time and going into San Francisco. San Francisco at that time was the summer of love. I don't know why. You're all far too young for this. The summer of love was the hippie evolution. And two streets adjoin in San Francisco. One is Haight Street, spelled H-A-I-G-H-T, and the other is Ashbury. And at the corner of Haight-Ashbury is where everybody congregated during the day. All the hippies were there. And in the beginning of this evolution or revolution, it was a very gentle place. It was a love place. It was give you flowers, wear flowers in your hair. If you're going to San Francisco, this is what you need. Everything is peace and love. And then the drugs came in. And that changed everything. But at the time, these devotees, Sam and Melanie, went along. Yeah, we want to do this. Sam, who later became Shamsundar, was very friendly with different bands at the time. And he put on a huge concert to get funds. He got Srila Prabhupada to come. There's the famous poster of Srila Prabhupada sitting like this, stay high forever. This was the message. Srila Prabhupada quoted at one time, so a journalist asked him, what are you doing here? Why have you come? Why are you here among the hippies? Prabhupada said, I'm turning the hippies into happies. So I'm going to skip a couple of, 2 or 3 years. And Srila Prabhupada, the Beatles were the biggest phenomenon. They were everywhere. They conquered England, they conquered America. There was no band bigger than the Beatles. So Prabhupada gathered 1 or 2 of his disciples together and said, go to England and meet the Beatles. And they said, that's going to be easier said than done. How do we do this? How can we do it? But they were empowered, so they flew off. Srila Prabhupada gave them lots of instruction before they left. They flew first of all to Amsterdam because again, they had nothing, they had no money. And by this time, Sam and Melanie, who were now Shamsundar and Malati, had a small daughter. She was maybe 18 months old when they came over. They flew first to Amsterdam, and then they had to get on the hovercraft from Amsterdam over to England. But they didn't have enough money to come all at once. So they came 2 by 2. First couple came over, then they'd send the money back. Second couple came over, because you had to have a certain amount of money to come into the country. Had to be able to prove that you could keep yourself, and of course they couldn't. So they managed to get in. They were living in London in various places, anywhere that people would put them up, would look after them. Again, such austerity that they went through. Eventually, well, first of all, that first year they were there, Shamsundar was very much a doer, a carpenter, a maker of things. So they decided to have a Rath Yatra festival. They'd had one in San Francisco where they had a truck, but this time they only had a really beat up old van. So they decided to make this Rath cart, and he made it, and they pulled it. They managed to get it attached to this van. They took it at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning so that nobody would see them to Hyde Park. And when they got there, the whole thing fell apart. So they didn't actually have a Rath Yatra festival that year. They weren't able to. The wheels fell off, everything went wrong. So then, eventually they managed to get a place in London, in Bloomsbury, Berry Place. Some of you may have heard devotees talking about the temple at Berry Place. But still, lots of difficulties were there. The neighbours didn't like the devotees being there. It's far too loud. This is a business area, a residential area. We can't have this. We've complained to the council. So the council came. And I love this story because it just shows the resourcefulness of devotees. So you'd walk into the front door of Berry Place and leave your shoes, and the temple room was on your left, a big heavy wooden door into the temple room. So they brought this man from the council, and the devotees were having kirtan. And he said, gosh, yeah, this really is extremely loud. And they said, well, yeah, in here it is, but you know, we're kind of soundproof, so when you go outside, you don't hear it. So they took him outside, and as soon as they walked outside, the devotees were. So he went back inside again, Hare Krishna. And he said, well, I don't hear it outside, I don't know what the neighbours. Just check this again. No, there's absolutely no problem here at all. I don't know what the complaint is for. And the devotees were able to stay, they didn't get thrown out. So this was in 1968, and I was 15 at the time. And like a lot of 15-year-olds at that time, I was a bit naughty. And I'd gone to London with a friend of mine, and we were in a place called the Marquee Club on Wardour Street. And about 9 o'clock in the evening, we came up for air, and we were confronted with this sight. Oh, what on earth? Whirling dervishes, bed sheets going off in this direction, that direction, banging drums, singing and dancing. And I was like, what on earth is this? I'd never seen anything like it before. And I watched them go down the street, and then my friend said, come on, go back inside, go back inside. And as I turned around, I noticed there was something on the floor. I picked it up, it was a little card that just had a picture of Krishna, and it said, chant and be happy. I took that card home with me, and I've had it ever since. It still sits in crowded place. And I went back home, and a couple, 2 or 3 weeks later, I saw these people. They were on top of the pops, of all places, because by then, the devotees had managed to go every day to the Apple studios, taking with them apple preparations. Jumuna was the most amazing cook. So every day they'd go to the Apple studios and they'd take apple preparations. And because it was food and prasadam, they were allowed in. And one day, they'd been going for several weeks, and they'd never seen the Beatles. They'd never met anybody. It was just people waiting and hoping to meet them. So one day, Shamsundar was there, and George Harrison came through the door, and he saw Shamsundar, and he went, "Where have you been? I've been looking for you for so long." And from that encounter became a wonderful friendship between the two, between Shamsundar and George Harrison. And it was as though Prabhupada had decided this was going to happen and empowered the devotees. So during this time, George Harrison produced and released the Hare Krishna mantra record, and that's why the devotees ended up on top of the pops. Again, because it was George Harrison. The Hare Krishna temple, they would never have got anything, but it was George Harrison, we'd better do this, you know. So I saw them on top of the pops, and then just a little bit of backstory. I grew up in Lancashire, and I have 6 brothers, and my father, all of whom were huge Manchester United supporters, and they used to take me along with them. And because this Hare Krishna record was actually in the charts, and you know how at football matches they play records, 32,000 people singing Hare Krishna. They had no idea what they were singing. 32,000 football fans at Old Trafford, all singing Hare Krishna. It was I look back on it, I didn't know what was happening at the time, but I look back on it and I think, I can't believe this. This is empowerment. So then, the deities were coming to Berry Place. And there's a lovely story about Radhalanda Nishwara. There was a gentleman who had these deities, Mr. Gayal, Indian gentleman. But Radharani's finger was chipped at the end. So they couldn't be installed. They weren't perfect. So he had them in a centre that he was running in London. And he kept telling Srila Prabhupada, yes, you can have these deities, yes, you can have these deities, yes, you know, you can have them, but never fulfilling the promise. So Prabhupada was in London, and he took 2 or 3 of the devotees, and he said, we'll go and see Mr. Gayal. So they went there, Mr. Gayal welcomed them, it was very nice, yes, please come in, yes, you can see the deities, they're not quite ready yet to, yes, said Srila Prabhupada, pick up Radharani, pick up Krishna. So the boys picked them up, they were as shocked as Mr. Gayal was. Yes, now let's go. So Prabhupada walked out. He took the deities, they kidnapped him. Prabhupada said, quickly, get them in the van. They put them in the van. They were right, quickly, let's drive off. Thank you, we're going. And then about 10 minutes into the journey, he said, now pull over. So they pulled over to the side of the road in London. Prabhupada got out. He went to the back of the van. He had the boys come, and they all offered their obeisances. Then they drove on to Berry Place. And that's how Radhalanda Nishwara came to be installed in Berry Place. They were kidnapped. So sometimes we hear the story of the kidnapping of Princess Rukmini, where she was due to marry Shishupal. She wrote a letter to Krishna. Oh my dear Krishna, please come and take me away from this. I don't want this. So at the last minute, as she was on her chariot going to the marriage, Krishna swooped in, stole Rukmini away, and rode off on his chariot. I know this story well because part of the service that I used to do was to be part of the theatre group, and we've done this story so many times. So the deities in Berry Place were installed on the 14th of November 1969. Sorry, I think this has just gone off. I'm not at all technically minded, so thank you. Okay. I'll carry on. I'll try my best. If you can't hear me, say so. So, in 1972, the devotees had outgrown Berry Place, and George Harrison was asked if he would help to find a bigger temple. Thank you. A devotee called Dhananjaya, who had joined at Berry Place, was also friendly with George Harrison, and George Harrison agreed. He said, yes, you can go and look for somewhere. So first of all, Dhananjaya found this very, very opulent property, wonderful property. He went back to George Harrison. He said, I found this property, it's wonderful. I'll come and see it. And George Harrison looked around and he said, this is a little palatial for you guys. I don't think this is right for you. Keep on looking. Then Dhananjaya found Pigott's Manor in Lechmore Heath. This place had been a nursing home, a training centre for nurses. It had been a school, a nunnery, all sorts of things. And the cost of this building was £220,000. Well, you're lucky if you can get a house in London for that these days. But George Harrison said, yes, okay, that's acceptable, we'll go with that. However, do not let them know that I'm buying this property, because if you do, the price will double overnight. So Dhananjaya did all the work, the money was paid, the devotees moved in, and on Janmashtami Day in 1973, Radha Gokulananda were installed by Srila Prabhupada. And on that occasion, the devotees were still, I wasn't there at the time, there was no money at all. But Prabhupada was coming. He was coming for Janmashtami, he was coming for Vyas Puja, he was coming to install the deities. And so some bright spark in the temple hired a helicopter to bring Srila Prabhupada from Heathrow to the manor. And the helicopter landed on the front lawn. And of course all the devotees, this was wonderful, the best thing we can do. But some weeks later, when Srila Prabhupada went to Indonesia, he got off the plane and he was met by a car. And sitting in the back of the car, Srila Prabhupada said, in England, I rode in a helicopter. And the devotee next to him said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And the devotees are still trying to pay for it. I don't know if you've ever seen the film of the installation of Radha Gokulananda. It's absolutely beautiful. For me, I only ever met Srila Prabhupada, well, I never met Srila Prabhupada in that regard. I was only ever in his presence 3 times. once was Rath Yatra, where Srila Prabhupada had been given a Vyasa-san on the Rath cart, and he said, he danced. How many of you been to Rath Yatra in London? Anybody? Yeah? Srila Prabhupada danced from Hyde Park to Trafalgar Square. I don't mean he walked. I don't mean he stopped every so often to catch up. He danced with his arms upraised. This, you know, what was he? He was 70s, 72 by this time. I'm 72 now, and I was at Rath Yatra this year, and I walked the whole way, and the next day I suffered so badly. How he did these things, we do not know. So I moved in 74, 75, the end of, and we lived in a small town in Lancashire, my husband and I, and every week, there were no such things as mobiles, no house phones, very few or far between. So every Saturday morning, my husband would go to the phone box on the corner and ring Rajahari, are there any rooms free? Are there any rooms? And every week he'd come back, there's no room at the Manor, there's no rooms free. And I used to think, I'm not ready for this yet. And then one week I saw him coming back, and there was a definite spring in his step. Coming back down the road, you know, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do? I know now. There's going to be a room. Within 2 days, we had packed up the house, we'd sold it to some friends of ours, and we'd moved down to the Manor. And I remember, how many of you been back to down to Manor? Do you know it? You know the little cottage as you're going in from the car park? If you face that cottage, the door in the middle, on the right-hand side, that's the first room we ever moved into in the Manor. And there was nothing in there, bare floorboards, cupboard, and a sleeping bag that we'd taken with us. And I remember my husband was so excited, I'm going over to the temple, I'll, got some service to do, I'll see you later. And I sat there feeling all forlorn and sad, and I didn't know what to do. People were falling on the floor, I didn't know why, I didn't know what was happening. I loved the deities. They were so beautiful. I knew that I wanted to build a relationship, but I was so young, so not of this case where I've been brought to live. And then there was a little knock on my door, and I was sat there like this. I opened the door, and there was a young girl stood there, and she said, "You need some help here, Hen?" I do. I really do. I don't like it here. I don't like it. There's even a mouse in the coop. I don't want to stay here. It's okay. Let me help you. And she did. That was the start of a friendship for me that has lasted well over 50 years. That devotee was Rasesvari Devi Dāsi, and she is my Siksha Guru, she is my guardian, she is my friend in Krishna consciousness. And I'm conscious of time. I'd just like to tell one final story, if that's okay. And this story is a little sad. This is about Srila Prabhupada's final visit to Bhaktivedanta Manor. He came in 1977, and we could see immediately that Srila Prabhupada was not himself. He wasn't speaking, he wasn't instructing, he was wearing dark glasses, he was sitting quietly in the temple room, and he wasn't walking very well. So some of the devotees had made a palanquin for him, a chair with sticks sticking out so they could carry him around. And every morning, ladies, we used to go up to Srila Prabhupada's room, put flowers on the palanquin, the boys would lift him in, he'd come down, and he was placed a little further back than the Vyasa is now at Bhaktivedanta Manor. They've sort of brought it out. And the ladies at Bhaktivedanta Manor stood in that corner every single day. That was our place. And even though there were devotees from all over Europe, men trying to move us down, trying to get us out of the way, we stood our ground and we sat by Prabhupada. And one morning, sometimes you're a little bit disappointed Prabhupada's not speaking to us and he's just sitting. But I was sat looking at Srila Prabhupada, probably as close as I am to you. And Srila Prabhupada was not only looking at the deities, he was having a conversation with them. I could see his mouth, I could see his lips moving. And I could see he was looking directly at Radha Gokulananda. Sita Ram Lakshman weren't there then, it was just Radha Gokulananda on the altar. And again, that stayed with me for a long, long time, seeing the relationship. I saw a deity, Srila Prabhupada saw Krishna. And on the last day, when he was leaving, at that time, again, no mobile phones. For devotees to have a camera, you were pretty much in Maya, probably, if you had a camera. What do you want that for? But we had a camera, and I knew there were 2 or 3 pictures left on the film in the camera. So we knew it was time. I ran over through the shoe room, across the courtyard, grabbed the camera, and instead of going back into the temple, I ran round the outside. And just as I got there, they were carrying Srila Prabhupada out of the reception room to get in his car. And all the devotees that would have been in front of me, that would have pushed me back, couldn't get out of the door at the same time. So I was fortunate enough to get the last 2 pictures of Srila Prabhupada at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And again, I have them on my phone if anyone wants to see them, you're more than welcome to see them. I just finish off. I don't know how long I'm supposed to speak, but I think there's prasadam and you finish at 5, so... Sorry?
I think it's okay.
Okay, so just very, very quickly then.
It's okay to speak a bit more. Sometimes we speakers speak a bit more.
Is that, yeah?
Yeah.
I could talk about Srila Prabhupada till tomorrow morning. So that was Srila Prabhupada's final visit to Bhaktivedanta Manor. And then, of course, he left, he went back to Vrindavan, and soon after, he left this world. And we couldn't believe how fortunate we were to be the last temple that Srila Prabhupada visited in the West. And I certainly couldn't believe how fortunate I was to have those pictures of Srila Prabhupada, which of course I've shared with Book Trust and everything. So for myself, my service, as Jagannatheshwari alluded to, has always been with children. I started with nursery at Bhaktivedanta Manor, and then as the children were growing, we needed a school. Oh, Rasesvari can do the school. She likes children. I had no qualifications at all. I left school at 15. I didn't even have any GCEs, GCSEs, whatever. I had nothing. But from that, my husband and I did start a school. We worked with an organisation called Education Otherwise, and we pretended that we were homeschooling the children to start with. And then Jaitirtha and Manjuwali came to England. We bought Chaitanya College, specifically to expand the Gurukul. We moved up there. This was near Worcester. Huge palatial place, beautiful. You can still go there. It's now owned by the National Trust. but we had the children there. Then we were asked to go to America and went to California, a place north of California between LA and San Francisco at the edge of the Sequoia National Park, a beautiful place. They had a grounds for a Gurukul there. So we helped, we worked setting that up. Then we were in Los Angeles for some time, and there was a part of ISKCON at the time, I don't know if anyone's heard of it, called FATE, F-A-T-E, in capitals with dots. That was the first American theistic exhibition. And they made all the dioramas and the things that could go out, the birth, from birth to death and changing bodies and all those things. And they made them in the traditional way, making them with straw and then covering them and sculpting them. And it was the Fate devotees who made this first small Prabhupada notice, this size. And we were coming back to England for a visit, and I've been asked to bring Srila Prabhupada Murti for Mother Anada. And I didn't want to trust him to baggage, he'll be broken, I don't know what to do with him. So I had him in a bag, and then when we got on the plane, I sat him on my knee. And I've said many, many times, this is the only flight where I've not been afraid. Didn't matter what they threw, turbulence, anything, I was fine. I had Srila Prabhupada, I had my arms around Srila Prabhupada. And as on long haul flights, they would come with some food, and the air hostess said to me, "This is your tray. What about your friend?" And I spent the rest of that flight thinking, yeah, what about my friend? Isn't it about time I stepped up? Isn't it about time I did something? And that stays with me. On the days when I wake up and I don't want to pick my bead bag up, and believe me, you never ever lose this. I was in Saltburn yesterday and last night speaking with Anna Piney, and she was saying, I feel so useless sometimes because I don't want to do this. I'm not enthusiastic every single day. She said, I've been doing this for 5-6 years and I still don't feel that every day. And finally, I've been doing it for 50 years and I still have the same problem. You just have to try your best. You just have to do your best. And living in the community rather than living in a temple setting, I think that every single person in this room should be applauded for the fact that you keep it going without the association, without the everyday kirtans, without someone, your temple president, saying, if you're not in Mangalarti before the curtains open, you're not having breakfast. All these things, and it's so much harder to do when you haven't got the association of devotees around you all the time. So, well done. And I'd just like to finish by saying, in community life, the 3 important things for me are chanting, reading, and offering. Bhagavad Gita says, Patram pushpam palam tvayam yome bhakti prayachate. If one offers me with love and devotion, a fruit, a flower, a leaf, I will accept it. So we don't have to be rich. We don't have to be every minute offering. We can offer a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. And pretty much we can manage to do that sometime during the day. I listened recently to a class given by SBK Shiva Maharaj, and he told a nice story. He said, "You've always got time. You've always got time for things that are important." He said, if you get in your car and you're going from Newcastle to Bhaktivedanta Manor, and somewhere around Preston you run out of petrol, someone's sitting there saying, "Yeah, but I didn't have time to fill the car." If you want to do something, if you have a plan, if you have a destination in mind, you make time to make sure you can do that. And if you don't, then you won't get there. So we do have time, but keep it simple. If you're finding it difficult, don't set yourself up to fail. Don't think, unless you're an initiated devotee and you've made your vows, don't think that on the first day I have to chant 50 rounds, I have to offer 4 offerings, I have to do that. Take it easy. Take it slowly. But each time, push yourself just a little bit more. Don't become complacent, but don't beat yourself up if you're not doing everything on day 1. Thank you so much for being so attentive. Are there any questions? Just spend a couple of minutes trying to answer any questions. If that's, again, I'm conscious of time. If you want me to stop, I will stop now.
Thank you, Mataji, for this amazing lecture. It's very, very inspiring.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to ask you something. So, from various devotees and from what I see as well, Prabhupada had genuine compassion. So he was genuinely around Pakar. And so what can we do to cultivate that mood? Because even like Krishna Goswami says, no matter how much he's been chastised by Srila Prabhupada, never was there a time where he felt that he wasn't loved.
Absolutely.
So, but for us sometimes, what can we do to cultivate this attitude towards other devotees as well as non-devotees in that sense?
What a lovely question. I would just take a step back and say, chant, read, offer. Compassion is enclosed in all those 3. If you're chanting, your compassion will grow because you will begin to see everything in a spiritual way. If you're reading, you will read Srila Prabhupada's words. Even if you just give 10 minutes a day, even if you read 1 verse a day, read Prabhupada's books. Srila Prabhupada hasn't actually left us. He is there in his books. Whenever you need something, open a book and just ask Srila Prabhupada, help me, please help me with this. Open a book, and a lot of the time you'll get the answer. It will be there in the purport or in the verse. You'll see the compassion coming through. But if you don't read Prabhupada's books, you will never get to know Prabhupada. You can't get to know Prabhupada just by coming to the temple and seeing the murti. You have to put the work in. You have to read those books, because that's where Prabhupada is now. It's no good having them wrapped in plastic and on your bookshelf. Oh yes, I've got Bhagavad Gita. I've got a full set of Bhagavatams. I've got all Chaitanya Charitamrita. But they've never been opened. They're not going to do you any good. Read the books. Read something every single day. And offer everything to Krishna. Not just food, not just water, everything. Your every move, from morning till night, is an offering to Srila Prabhupada, it's an offering to Krishna. That's how your compassion will grow. You will then see, as the learned sage sees, as it tells you in Bhagavad Gita, Advaita, a Vaishnava, a learned Brahmin, you'll see them all the same. Once you see them all the same, then your compassion is there. Okay, so shall we finish? Jonah Fisher?
I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you were listening to class by education and marriage.
Yep.
And you said we've always got time.
Mm.
As a mother of 2 young children,
Yep.
and I work as well, plus I've got servicing time.
Yep.
So time
It's precious.
is very precious.
Absolutely it is. Yes.
How do you find that balance in life, you know, as a mother yourself and as a devotee who's been preaching and, you know, or devoted to service and working?
Mm.
What advice would you give, you know, people like myself? You know, how do you manage that time? Because by the end of the day, I come back from work and look after my children, I feel like you know, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and so what would you advise? Like, you know,
I fully understand where you're coming from. Honestly, I do. Yes, I've raised 3 children, but I also was an ashram teacher. I had 12 children under 7, 12 girls every morning. And I was teaching and looking after the children as well. By 7 o'clock at night when they went to sleep, I feel your pain, seriously. What can you do? You can take 5 minutes. Somewhere around, we can find 5 minutes. Yes, you're exhausted, but 5 minutes early, read 1 verse, to chant 20 Hare Krishnas. It will set you up for the day. Then go, okay? When you get to work, if you're using a computer, have Radha Gokulananda or Prabhupada or whoever you want as a screensaver. So every time it times out, you see Krishna. You don't have to do anything, you just have to see him. A lot of workplaces, they don't want you to have pictures on desks and things like that, and I understand that. Have it as a screensaver, you'll see Krishna. Just to remind yourself that what you're doing, the work that you're doing may seem mundane, but actually the work you're doing is enabling you to raise those children as devotees. Being a mother is the most important job that anybody can do. It's so important. Prabhupada once said that the demigods were lining up to take birth in this movement. We do not know who these children are. We see this much of our lives and of their lives. We see that much in an eternity. You've been given 2 children. However busy you get, you won't neglect them. You will find time. So you also will find time for their spiritual enhancement. Every day you go to work, you're earning money, you will raise those children because that's what you need to do. And one day, it will be Mother's Day. And you'll wake up and you'll hear something downstairs, and those children will bring you some burnt toast and some cold tea, and it will be the best meal you've ever eaten. And it will be that because you have struggled to nurture them and you've loved them. And that will be your greatest offering to Krishna. And from what I've seen, you're already doing a darn good job. Yes?
Yeah, that was a very good question. I agree with you that it's important to start with the reading. Start with Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's wonderful. You know, I did an MA on the Bhagavad Gita, and I didn't learn really that much that was meaningful until I picked up later after that Prabhupada's, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. That one book is a great way to pick up a little Sanskrit, but it is an inspired, it is a path to enlightenment, just that book, so smart. Yes, I agree completely. But, given this wonderful question here, the things are different than the time you're describing. I'm older too, so I remember the way things were.
Yeah.
Things have changed so much because of technology, for example. And people have less time in their days, what I've noticed.
There are
because of
24
technology.
hours in every day.
Yes.
They don't get longer, they don't get shorter.
Yes, but the commitment, what I mean is that the commitment now, like someone said, people need now several hours just to relax. It's become habitual, just to relax online, watching a movie and doing, it's like there's an addiction with technology. I don't know. But, so, I agree with you, you need to make time because technology is making it so people can't find time for stuff anymore. Like
So
reading.
That's why we have to make our decision. We have to make a decision that this is what we want to do. There are millions and millions of people who will never pick up a Bhagavad Gita. They will never chant Hare Krishna. But everybody in this room has made a decision that that's what they want to do. So we have to be grown up about this and we have to say, do I want to spend half an hour doom scrolling? Or do I want to spend 25 minutes doom scrolling and 5 minutes reading a book? It's our choice.
Yeah.
We always have a choice. And as I say, if you want to get in a car and drive to London, you have to find time to put the petrol in the car. If you come here and you make a decision that you want to hear about Krishna, you want to become Krishna conscious, then find time to put petrol in the car, to put Krishna in your brain, to put Prabhupada's words, because otherwise it won't happen. And that's our choice.
That's a good point. Could I just ask a follow-up? Do you think that there will come a type of time, as you described, with that type of excitement in the West for Srila Prabhupada? Because that was a time of great excitement for the teachings of Srila Prabhupada that you're describing. And will people... But it was also, in a sense, a freer time. Like, I think you'll relate. When I was a kid, growing up, all I cared about was my gym shoes, my backpack, and my blue jeans. That's it. Now, that's very different to what young kids are growing up with now.
Yep.
Their minds are filled with tons of other stuff.
Yep.
So, that was a very free time in the 60s, 70s, even 80s. And people could sleep, they were sort of freer in a sense. And they allowed them to get really excited about ISKCON. Do you think we will experience that type of excitement again for ISKCON?
You will, because you're here. These girls will, because they're here. They have made a conscious decision to be part of this movement.
So,
But Bhagavad
choice.
Gita tells you, out of many millions of people, only one will seek knowledge of me. And out of all those millions of people, only one knows me in truth. So, the answer to your question is yes, if you want. There's excitement here, there's kirtan, it's wonderful, you can dance, you can chant, you can sing. But you've got to make that choice.
That's a very good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we need to finish there as well. I'll be here for a while if anyone wants to come and ask anything else. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being so attentive. Thank you for making me so welcome and listening to the glories of my dear spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Ki Jai.